Okay. Well, Rick and I just had an incredible conversation. Um, me using a new technology and Rick working with his own technology.
Yeah.
And thank you all for patiently waiting. And then we might have a shorter interview than what we did. Just realizing that I made a huge technical error with the new technology here. Rick, can you stick around for a couple minutes?
Oh yeah, I'm
Okay.
fine. I'm amazed it works at all. It's like magic to me.
Okay. So
Yeah.
so let me reintroduce Rick. Rick has come in. Thank you everyone for waiting. And Rick and I actually just had a beautiful time together. We thought we were live, and it turns out we were not. And and so I know Rick will forgive me because he is a dear friend of mine and
No worries.
a wonderful mentor and teacher. And I couldn't be more grateful. We were talking. We'll get into this again. For his presence and his willingness to be with us today. And I know so many people here um, are fans of yours, and or let me just say students of yours. In so many ways, and so many of your words have touched their lives as they have mine. And your writings and your teachings. And one of the things that really connects me most to Rick, aside from just feeling this real affinity with his spirit and background and mind, and is the integration that he uses behind, which isn't necessarily an easy thing to do, and he does it so skillfully and with so much utility. Is this integration of the contemplative philosophical world of things and the neuroscience of it, and then not just that, because a lot of people might just stop there, and then he reaches it into our lives and makes it useful so that we can kind of practice it in our lives and realize the benefits of it versus just kind of reading it, which a lot of people do. They read something and they go, oh, that was really interesting. They feel elevated by it and they put it back. And then, but what you do is create this real integration that's here. And so, so today, we're going to be talking about the wisdom and the science of our highest happiness. And, I also want to share with you, before we kind of just get into some questions, is that, Rick is also not just a neuropsychologist and author of so many best-selling books. The one that kind of really kind of landed the foundation was Buddha's Brain. If you haven't seen that, you want to definitely check that out. And I remember when Just One Thing came out, so digestible and useful, made a big impact on a lot of people's lives. And then came, Hardwiring Happiness and Resilient, and now Neurodharma. All these incredible gifts to us. Almost 1 million copies of those around the world, touching people's lives and hearts, just in English alone, by the way. He's done incredible work with this institute called the Wellspring Institute prior to this and throughout it. You may or may not even know about that, but that's, really this institute that some of the meat of the neuroscience and contemplative wisdom, and he's been sharing that for quite a long time. Lectured all around the world. I don't need to kind of go into that too much, but I think the most important thing is how much you've touched me and the people around you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Really? Well, let's get into it.
Okay, beautiful. Sometimes Rick and I have these calls, by the way, where he and I just talk for a while, and that's basically what we just had. We had one of our calls. It's beautiful. I wanted to kind of ask you, because I think this was an important question, and if you'd be willing to share this, that people are oftentimes curious about what led us or anybody's lives, what's their story around how come you focused your life and your profession on focusing on how to help us and being a leader, how to help us be well in this world, not just be not just relief from suffering, but actually be well and move towards helping us even reach our highest happiness. What was personal to you that led you to move in that direction, personally and professionally?
It's funny, Elisha, when you ask that question, it really leads me to reflect. And at least my own view is that there is not the distinction, but categorically, between focusing on not being miserable, the range from -10 to 0, and then 0 to +10. We tend to think like, well, you either want to help people not have psychopathology, right? Or you want to help people actualize and even awaken. And the more I reflect on it, I think the two go together. In other words, I think that as we grapple with, let's say, depression or anxiety or trauma, it's really useful to draw upon things that the great teachers have spoken of. The recognition of things are impermanent, a sense of our own natural goodness, a feeling of interdependence and connection with everything, mindfulness, compassion, self-compassion, helping oneself find a place inside that has a tranquility in it, an equanimity in it, even as those are all really good resources for dealing with addiction, trauma, depression, and anxiety. On the one hand. On the other hand, as people move into, let's say, self-actualization, or are deliberately focused on spiritual practice or peak experiences or awakening, it's really useful to have worked with the basement of your own mind, those old wounds, those old losses, things that were missing when you were young, so that you can release those stones from your backpack as you keep on going up the mountain of awakening. So for me, actually, they go together. I have focused a lot, as you know, on the development of resources inside. In other words, if you think about the mind, we can engage it in three ways. We can witness it, we can let go of what's a problem, and we can grow the good inside. In effect, let be, let go, let in. Or if the mind were like a garden, we could witness it, pull weeds, and plant flowers. So I think it is true. There is a place for pulling weeds. I have wanted to pull a lot of weeds in my own mind. I've wanted to empty my bucket of tears one spoonful at a time, on the one hand. On the other hand, I have really focused on the process of growing flowers in the garden of the mind, the actual positive neuroplasticity. How do we actually change the body so that we develop traits of mindfulness, traits of courage, traits of self-compassion, traits of self-worth, and so forth, that are stable inside us, that go with us wherever we go. So that aspect, I think, of planting flowers in the garden of the mind has been not focused on enough in the world of clinical psychology, nor in general in the spiritual traditions. I think it's sort of been somewhat pushed to the side, bhavana, cultivation. But it's a very important thing, and it's fascinating how we can actually take charge of the brain change process ourselves. We can actually really influence who we are becoming at the end of the day compared to where we woke up, at the end of the week compared to where we started on Monday, right? We can actually help ourselves over the months and years of our lives become genuinely stronger, happier, wiser, and more loving. And that to me is full of opportunity.
And it seems so grounded in this real life experience that if you practice something and you repeat it, it's part of nature and our physiology. It starts to get stronger.
I know,
right?
Which is very hopeful, especially when you feel helpless about the world around us. You can always influence your own mind. I'll give you one particular example. I mentioned it previously if people somehow heard what we were talking about before. So I grew up a very shy, kind of quiet, really awkward kid. And I missed out on a lot of healthy social supplies. Being seen, being included, being wanted. I felt pretty horrible, like I had a huge hole in my heart. And then in college, somehow intuitively, I realized that if I slowed down to do three things, it would change my life. Number one, recognize good facts. A simple thing. Some friends who said, hey, let's go get pizza. A simple, small thing. Recognize the good facts. Don't miss them. So think about us in our lives these days. Alongside the losses and what is not working, there are also many other things that are still working or we can still be thankful for, including the goodness inside people's hearts, including our own hearts.
So important during this time.
See the good facts. And then second, feel something. I know a lot of people. They see the good facts. Oh, I got that done. Oh, you smiled at me. Whatever. They don't feel anything. Partly because in our culture, we're always chasing the next shiny object. Feel something. And then third, this was really important. When someone would smile at me and I would recognize they smiled at me, and then I would feel smiled at, a little moment of connection of, oh, I'm not a loser after all, then take it in, receive it into yourself so that it sinks in. And literally, as we now understand neurologically, leaves lasting physical traces behind in your nervous system, especially in your brain, so that increasingly over time, you can fill up that huge hole in your heart, in my case, a huge hole, and also you can help yourself become stronger, smarter, more effective, more loving, wiser, more awakened, every day. Bit by bit, it really adds up over time.
So there's opportunities to do that during the more difficult moments, and there's opportunities to do that during the higher moments.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I remember when mindful self-compassion came on the scene, and there was a big resistance to it. Like, why are you teaching, these types of things? They should happen naturally. If you're just practicing mindfulness, it's an implicit reaction of love and compassion, and you can really do it both ways. And that's the beautiful thing I love about your work, is you do talk about how, there's the inevitable difficult moments that are there, and here's how we can kind of work with them. And one thing that a lot of people aren't talking about as much, is that there's these also wonderful moments that you can, really recognize and instill, and in your words, install.
Yeah.
A bit more. Yeah.
Can I? What my book is really about.
Yeah.
7 strengths, and that you find perfected in the great teachers and sages and saints throughout history, and we can recognize the beginnings of them, at least inside ourselves, and then we can develop them further. So, for example, the strength of steadiness of mind, stable mindfulness, concentration, stability, absolutely fundamental, stable presence of being. Second, warmth of heart, warming the heart. The heart does not naturally warm on its own just because we're witnessing the stream of consciousness. We all know people who are very good meditators who are not very loving, and they're not very happy, and they're not easier to work with or live with or sleep with, right? Warming the heart. Third strength is equanimity. Equanimity is more useful today than ever. This fundamental, I call it resting in fullness, where you have a sense of enough already, so there's less basis for the craving for more that creates so much suffering and harm. You rest in a sense of emotional balance and stability. That's a really important strength. Those 3, steadiness, lovingness, fullness, go together. The next 3 strengths in my 7-strength model: a feeling of wholeness. You're undivided, you're not leaving things out, and you're rested in a sense of being, in which different kinds of doing move through. So your wholeness is one of being, in which the analytic aspects, part by part by part, of doing can unfold. 5th, nowness. Really being here now, as Ram Dass taught, bless him. Really, what's it take neurologically to rest in the freshness of the arising moment as it passes through us radically, continuously? That's a beautiful strength, because when we're in the present, we're not, beating ourselves up about the past or ruminating about the future. That's a really important strength. 6th, opening into allness, that recognition, which to me is so timely with this epidemic, this plague that is inside our house, inside the world. And to realize that we are vulnerably dependent on all kinds of things around us. And also we can feel supported by the world, and we can relax the contraction of self, releasing the feeling of me, myself, and I, my precious, right? That's very useful too. Allness, a recognition of allness, one with everything, right? And then last, finding timelessness, the sense of timelessness, the sense of the spaciousness of awareness that is self and does not change, even as changes move through it, a sense of stillness, a sense of vastness, mystery. The Buddha talked about the unconditioned, what is meaningfully distinct from ordinary, conditioned, Big Bang reality. So those, to me, are 7 strengths. They might sound a little exotic, except we all can feel them, and they call our heart. And the more we develop ourselves in these ways, the more we cultivate steadiness, lovingness, fullness, wholeness, nowness, allness, timelessness, the more effective we are in the crud of daily life, like waiting for the technology to work between you and me. I was drawing on my inner strengths. I bet you were too, because you've been at this a long time. These qualities are really helpful in daily life. And I'm going to bang on this point here. I think it's really important. It's more important than ever when things fall apart in ordinary life to keep our eyes on the highest reaches of who we can be, all the way to the top of the mountain of human potential, because that inspires us and it gives us a sense of purpose and direction and possibility, even as we're struggling with issues here and now. I think it's weird that a lot of people they've kind of plateaued. They might have a year of mindfulness under them, and some self-compassion. It's all good. It's all good. It's all good, And, well, is that it? No. The great teachers, including the Buddha, have all said, come join us. Go all the way. Keep going. Just every day. Don't strive. Don't stress about it. Don't strain about it. But every day, why not become a little more awakened every day?
Every one of those elements that you just relayed from Neurodharma, I was like taking a moment with each one of them as you were saying it, and just kind of feeling, all of that, all of that. It seems like you've created a really integral model, of I won't even say living well, but I would say like living, living and with a real sense of inner peace.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah, and let me ask you this question, because I'm also, and anyone here who kind of follows me, also so interested in helping people get to that next place for themselves, get them not just out of their own suffering, but be able to see a bigger world for themselves, and work with people and envisioning what that could be, because that's where it starts. You have to let your mind kind of go to that place and celebrate it in some ways. What in the science of interdependence, and a little bit about Rick and I was actually just looking, Rick, and of just some stuff on my computer. You can search for things based on names and stuff. And I saw that you and I were in an interview together, or back. It wasn't necessarily together. It was separately based on one of Nickelbaum's things, and I saw the word Neurodharma in a 2011 document from you. That there was like an interview from 2011. You were using that. This has been around for a while. This term, that you created. Can you say a little bit? And
sure.
I put you on the spot, not just about the Neurodharma piece, but say a little bit about that if you can. That's actually what I want to, and then I want to ask you a different question. Yeah.
Oh, okay, sure. So,
what does it mean?
Yeah. It really is like so straightforward. I'm like, okay. Well, anytime I've ever wanted to get better at something, like cooking. Our daughter, who now lives with us, who's 29, came in from New York City after she'd had the illness, and now she's living with us, which is great. She's an excellent cook. So I'll watch how she makes onions, and I'll go, oh, wow. That's cool. And I'll even start observing how she thinks about cooking, like how does she relate to it? What is her attitude about it? What's going on inside? And so then I kind of reverse engineer, in effect, or I channel Laurel as a cook in much the same way. People that I've known or met, or if you read, you kind of feel the transmission coming through with their writing. You get a sense of, wow, what's it like to be them in regard to maybe a particular thing? And then how can I be more that way myself? Not because there's something bad or missing in myself. It's like a simple step of greater skillfulness, or, living our way into an attitude or a feeling in the body that feels, seems good, right? Seems like, yeah, that would be really useful. So for me, I've been extremely interested in the wisest, strongest, most loving, courageous, happiest people who've ever lived.
Mm.
And the wisdom traditions from around the world, the perennial wisdom from around the world, in all kinds of traditions, including those of the first people, the indigenous native people around the world, their traditions. So I've wanted to learn from them, right? I want to be like that myself, including,
Great strategy. Yeah.
why not take the next step toward enlightenment? I may not make it all the way in this life, but one step at a time, keep on going. So that's really drawn me. And so then if we work backwards, what's going on in there? How do they really stay completely in the present moment? How do they keep their hearts open while dealing strongly, sometimes in political action with adversaries? How do they do that? How do they rest in what they clearly are experiencing most, if not all of the time? Tremendous serenity, tremendous inner peace. The ordinary contracted, striving, divided, worried qualities that so much of us are familiar with, suffering
Especially now.
broadly.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially now, but even kind of generally,
Mhm.
they don't have it. They're free of that. If it even arises, it might arise, but it's sort of like, oh, that's interesting. It's like a
Mhm.
passing cloud in the vast sky of their mind. So I want to be like that. I want more of that. So then I'm a very practical guy. I work backwards. Oh, what synapses? What connections? What circuitry is going on there? What flows of serotonin and oxytocin are underneath all that? And that, to me, leads one into a very, I think, obvious consideration. What is the bodily basis of enlightenment?
Mhm.
What is the bodily basis of profound compassion, especially in the key part of the body that's so central to these experiences and ways of being, the nervous system and brain? So I work backwards. What's going on in the brain when someone is incredibly loving, strong, and wise? And increasingly, especially the last 10, 20 years, we're beginning to have the early state information in the baby science that is neuroscience that is plausibly beginning to make some suggestions that answers that question. So this is my long way now of a short answer to your question, what is neurodharma? We can know ourselves from the outside in, objectively, through the lens of science, biology, and neurology. We can also know ourselves from the inside out, subjectively, in the first person perspective of our psychology, our experiences, our contemplative awareness. And neurodharma is where these two ways of knowing ourselves meet. And when we bring them both together, it's profoundly powerful. And it's also a way to stand in the truth. The truth is, we are a body-mind process. And I think many, many people in the helping professions and psychology and mindfulness pay lip service to the body. They're interested in the mind of the body. They're interested in mindfulness of body sensations, but they kind of balk at the idea that we are continuously body full of mind. It is the body that is making this moment of hearing, loving, hating, wanting, enjoying now continuously. And this gives us opportunities to use the mind to influence the brain, to influence the mind,
I love
whose
that.
benefits then we take with us wherever we go.
Love that. Yeah. I remember when I first learned that the reason that our eye that we can feel dizzy or get blurred vision in the middle of a panic attack is because our eyeballs are just an extension of our brain, and so that when you can use your mind to start to control your heart rate a little bit or kind of cool things down, the dizziness and the imbalance starts to go away.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
One thing I'll give you two hacks lately that I've been really fascinated, like
Okay.
new science, right? This really cool stuff.
Love the science. Let's get
Yeah,
into
yeah,
it
it's great.
for a
So
second.
these come from the one practice I'll tell you in a second is from the wholeness chapter. It's about being whole. The other one is from wholeness, how to kind of open into everything. So first one is, if you get a sense of your body as a whole, and you can start with the area in your chest as you breathe, like sensations on the left, sensations on the right, and then left and right together. Same with front and back. And then you start to feel your chest as a whole as you breathe, and then move out into your body as a whole. If there's anything uncomfortable about mindfulness of the body, as there is sometimes for people who've been traumatized, especially mindfulness of breathing, you could pick something different, like a sense of the whole room. But when you move into a sense of wholeness, two things happen in your brain. Number one, activity in the midline of the cortex, including toward the rear where the default mode network is based, that decreases. And as it decreases, you come into the present, and you have a sense of not future or past time traveling, and you get out of the ruminator, and you decrease verbal activity, which is often an engine of negative rumination, just by feeling your body as a whole. Meanwhile, activity in the side of your brain, especially the right side for right-handed people for whom the right hemisphere does holistic processing, switched for left-handed people, activity increases in these networks on the sides of your brain, which are involved with present moment mindfulness. Just being with things as they are, less sense of self, and more just rested in the suchness of things as they are without conceptualizing about them. People can try this within a couple dozen seconds. If you just start focusing on the internal sensations of your body and the sense of your whole body as a single, whole, unified field in which many sensations are occurring, you'll notice an immediate change of consciousness. That's very cool. Another one, allness, is that naturally in the brain, we cycle back and forth between what's called an egocentric frame of reference, not conceited or arrogant, just self-referential. What's it got to do with me? And then we move into, several times a minute, naturally, what's called an allocentric perspective, in which we take things impersonally as a whole, in which we're just a part. Well, if you look close to your body, and right now you can watch this, you can observe this in your own experience. If you look kind of near yourself, there's naturally an increased sense of self, because of course, whatever's close to us in the Stone Age or back in Jurassic Park could really matter. Is it going to eat us, or is it food? Could we eat it? Hug it or run from it, friend or foe. But if you move your gaze out toward the horizon and even above, you'll notice a shift of consciousness over a couple dozen seconds, or just a handful of seconds, really, in which there's more of a sense of things as a totality, impersonally, less sense of self, calmer, less self-referential, more peaceful. Bingo. Both are useful, right? Except most of us are much too self-preoccupied, and so much suffering is grounded in selfing. And just that little trick of looking out, or you can do it in your imagination, getting a sense of a bird's eye perspective, the sky of mind, that will change your brain. And, very quickly, it'll change your sense of yourself too. And these are examples. And of course, with practice.
Really practical.
Really totally practical. Yeah. And with practice, you could take it more radically. Like, for example, in the wholeness practice, if you recognize this, the structure of all suffering, all unhappiness, involves parts struggling with parts. For example, see the cookie, part, want the cookie, another second part. A voice says, no cookie for you, carbs, bad boy. Then a fourth part comes in and says, oh, it's okay. It's just a cookie. Just one cookie's fine. And then another part says, who are all those voices, right? All these part. That's the structure of suffering. Conflict, as Freud taught a long time ago. But when you go more into the sense of whole, your body as a whole, then including sounds, then including thoughts, and then you start having a non-dual sense of just your consciousness as a whole, this moment of experience as a whole, because it always is just one moment of consciousness, right? With awareness included, something remarkable starts to occur. You stop suffering. The sense of suffering drops out when you're just abiding as mind as a whole. That's very radical and powerful. So you can see this is an example of taking a little practice like awareness of the sensations of breathing in a foot diameter, half a meter diameter circle around your heart area, then expanding. That simple practice can become something really profound and sublime. Same with allness. You can look out to the horizon, you can feel calmer, or more and more radically, you can start to feel a very soft, porous boundary between you and everything. And as you know, this teaching from Dogen, the great Zen master, to study the way is to study the self. To study the self is to forget the self. To forget the self is to perceive yourself as all things, or to be enlightened by all things. And so that allness practice too, it could be a simple little trick. You look out a window in the middle of a meeting, you immediately start feeling less stressed. Or with practice, more and more, you can start to enjoy what the Dalai Lama said to the hot dog vendor: please make me one with everything.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, I love that. Nicole here is someone, I know we have to get you out of here in just in a few minutes. She said, so allness, is that also recognizing whatever is happening to me has happened or is happening to someone else?
That's a beautiful part of it, I think. Common humanity, it brings us into it. We know rationally that that this moment of experience is the universe operating locally. We know that rationally, right? We know rationally that we are inhaling the exhalations of green growing things. We know rationally that we are breathing stardust, right? Every atom in the universe, bigger than helium, was built inside a star, usually as it exploded, such as the oxygen we're breathing right now, or the carbon or calcium, in our body. We know that rationally, but to feel that we are a local quivering in the vast network of reality, that we're all waves in the ocean of causes, whose nature all along is water. That's something to develop over time, to feel it more and more. And it's really interesting as you feel it more and more. I find with this crazy COVID-19 pandemic right now, I know that when I feel my interdependence, I feel more respectful of other people. I also feel more careful about the ways that a virus can move around invisibly and harm people. And I also feel, honestly, more supported by the amazingness of life, which gives me an easier way to handle the sense of sorrow and loss.
You're sensing into the web, which is like if you fall and you have a strong web, it's gonna catch you, feel supported, you feel
Beautiful.
safer with that sense of interdependence there. I'm
Yeah,
noticing a
that's
lot of
beautiful.
people are taking this in. Lisa said, I'm going to stew on that, keeping eyes on the prize of highest goal during troubles, which is something we talked about earlier. And Keith said, this is such a gift of time, your commitments, love the idea of allness, interconnectedness, so close to all of our hearts. It's really like, I love what Rick's talking about, that saying that giving to ourselves and others. I love how Keith said here, neurodharma to neurodana, maybe.
I think he has a play on words there with Donna, meaning generosity. I think
Yeah,
you're saying,
right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Beautiful. Like I know Rick has to leave in just a minute. So if anyone has just another question, maybe he can kind of field that.
Yeah, happy to.
Philippe says, how can we feel this in a world which is driven by ego and greed?
Well, that's a really great question. I think first, feeling this is more important than ever in a time of ego and greed. In other words, the worse it is outside, the more it's important to protect ourselves and develop ourselves on the inside. And there are many examples throughout history in which people kept the flame alive during dark times that were vastly darker than our own, times of the Great Black Plague, the bubonic plague, or the Dark Ages in terms of the West, or these eras in China or other times where, everything fell apart and a few people kept the flame of wisdom alive. So, people did it before. They stayed strong when the world fell apart around them, and we can too. So how to do it? I think one is to come together with people like Elisha in this community and the others in this collective you have here. That's super important. I think another that's key is to return to practice have a minute or more a day of actual real practice, even if it's just the
Mhm.
last minute before you go to bed. I think that's really important. I also think it's extremely important these days, especially, to look for what we can be thankful for. We can value and appreciate and take refuge in, not to do positive thinking, not at all, not to look at the world through rose colored glasses, but because gratitude makes us stronger. Gratitude makes us resilient. To recognize what is also true will help us deal better with the losses and the challenges, the injustices, the outrages, really, that are going on around us. So to me, they really go together. And I really like appreciating little silly things. You could say silly, like the water in my glass. Water, stardust, oxygen and hydrogen. Thank you, universe, right?
Creates
Wow.
wonder. There's
Or
wonder.
yeah, or like a little bit of grass coming up through the sidewalk. Or you watch someone, like I take courage, I take heart from all the healthcare workers, all the first, responders, and also all the people who are not famous, who are staying home with their kids to teach them school while still pulling a job, or they're protecting their aunt who's 80 years old who lives with them right now. They're doing that kind of thing. Like we can recognize those things that are also true right now and draw strength from that and feel fed by that. Really important.
Yeah, draw strength and feel fed. We all need so much of that, during this time to draw strength and feel fed when so many people feel depleted. And there's ways it can do this. I mean, I'll just saying we got to let Rick go. Just thank you so much, Rick,
Oh,
for
thank you.
your time and your presence and all the gifts you've given, to this world. I mean, I hope you can. It's almost hard, probably. I imagine it hard to kind of even take that in, the amount of lives that you've touched and changed, and including my own. So,
You're
so
all
thank
really,
you.
thank you very much. And lately I've been thinking about my theme song for this time, from my Dharma teacher, Neil Young, keep on rocking in the free world. I think that's really important now. Moxie, kind of a moxie, I think is a really underrated spiritual strength and one that we need more these days than ever.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, man.
So Neurodharma brings together all his latest. If you want the most advanced, top of the line Rick, you got. That's where he's at right now. So check that out. And by the way, let me just make a mention out loud to everyone here that, as everyone here knows, we have a book club in the Mindful Living Collective, currently reading Caroline Welch's Gift of Presence, and Neurodharma I'm going to suggest as being the next book that the book club reads. I think we have, currently like 3,300 members in there. So, not in the book club itself, but in the collective. So,
do you mind if I read the first paragraph of the book?
I don't mind. I'm just being conscious of your time.
Oh, you're really sweetheart. Well, I don't want to bore people. I'll just do this little part. And I want to stress the point that I find that the highest wisdom is usually the simplest and most direct and most piercing. Comes right into the heart, right? And that's what I tried to do in the book, is to really summarize the wisdom of the great teachers and offer it in a really simple way. And it's important for me that we don't think of this as only for the special few. It's really for all of us. So here's the opening paragraph to the book. Here we go. I've hiked a lot in the mountains, and sometimes a friend farther up the trail has turned and looked back and encouraged me onward. Such a friendly gesture. Come join me. Watch out for the slippery ice. You can do it. I've thought often about these moments while writing this book, which is about the heights of human potential, about being as wise and strong, happy and loving as any person can ever be. If those heights are like a great mountain, awakening is the magnificent journey that carries you along toward the top. Many real people have gone very far up, the great sages and teachers throughout history, as well as others no one has heard about. And I imagine them turning with a sweet smile and beckoning us to join them.
I love that.
That's our opportunity.
Well, let's close with that.
Thank
Beautiful.
you.
I could see mindfulness with Marsh, so I vote for Rick's book next. Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much, Rick.
Thank you,
And
Elisha, friend. Talk
yeah.
later too.
Okay.
Bows to you all.
Bye. Bye for
Bye-bye.
now, everyone.